credit unions have a very unique spot in the marketplace.
We work for our members. We don't work for stockholders.
What we provide to them is the individual attention.
They don't nickel and dime you to death with fees.
If you join the credit union, you're going to get a better deal.
Credit unions provide a very, very special service.
It's a wonderful spirit.
The member is what the credit union movement is all about.
I was very lucky to have the credit union.
Credit unions were established to help people in need. Today, the mission of the credit union is exactly the same as it was 150 years ago: to do good by helping people to realize their dreams. Credit unions believe that serving people, their members, is the only reason they exist.
When I walk into a credit union, I feel comfortable. I feel like I'm a part of a community.
After you get divorced and you're coming back from that, it's really important that you feel like you can stand on your own 2 feet and to depend on yourself.
Everything that you want is all there. I just can't believe how good it is. I'm just sorry that more people couldn't belong to credit unions.
The Camelot of consumer finance. That's what many experts call credit unions. Their influence has grown steadily throughout the past century. It's a simple concept: a cooperative financial organization owned by members who are also its customers and shareholders. They pool their money and make loans to each other. The officials, directors, committee members are volunteers.
If you want any transactions, just give me a call and I can help you on the phone with that.
Today, professional staffs run most credit unions, although some of the smaller ones are still operated by their volunteer leaders.
Personal bills, okay.
Credit unions are not for profit, not for charity, but for service to their members.
Banks have 2 people they're trying to serve. They're trying to serve their customers, and they're trying to serve their stockholders. Credit unions are serving one master, and that's the member.
Service to most members of a credit union is, first of all, they want you to be accurate, they want you to be quick, they want you to be knowledgeable. They want to know if they come there and have a problem, somebody's there to take care of them, to give them good information.
And this is for your required distribution, since you're going to be 70 and a half.
Earnings from operations, from making real estate and consumer loans, accepting savings and CDs, providing checking accounts, and a full range of other financial services are returned to the members who created them, improving rates and giving the credit union a distinctive edge in an already highly competitive financial services marketplace. All of this is made possible for the members, by the members, ordinary people, folks who weren't supposed to have the financial skills to create and run financial institutions. They make credit unions work.
Thank you. Been nice.
Thank you, Joseph.
We are always the lowest in fees charged to individuals, the highest in returns on interest to individuals across the United States. That becomes a benchmark for every financial institution in the United States to look at. I think that's one of the reasons why some of our competitors would like to see us out of the way. If we were out of the way, they could raise the rates without any benchmark, without any question as to what the true rate should be.
Credit unions have helped not only credit union members, but also the customers of banks, because credit unions are very aggressive in trying to be low-cost providers, and that provides some much-needed price competition in the financial services sector.
The capital position that they have, the strength of their equity position throughout the credit union system is among the highest in all financial institutions, and is certainly the highest that it's ever been historically. So I think credit unions set the standard as far as safety and soundness is concerned, but I think they also set the standard as far as personal touch member service.
We're allowed to help people in ways that maybe purely profit-driven companies wouldn't do. We're allowed to help the underserved. We're allowed to help people in need, even sometimes when there's no real good business reason why we should do it. It's just because it's the right thing to do.
When we look at the most significant advances of the 20th century, it's easy to spot the most obvious ones. The jet engine, computers, near miracles in healthcare. It's also easy to overlook one of the most important, the rise of consumer credit. Without an ever-growing demand for the nation's goods, manufacturers and their marketers could not have helped America achieve the world's highest standard of living. Consumer credit in this country, as opposed to strictly commercial or agricultural credit, dates to the 1840s. Then people could rent a piano or a sewing machine or a whole parlor suite of stiff horsehair-covered furniture and decide later whether to buy them. Today, we'd call it a lease option. The kind of credit we're familiar with today came along at the turn of the 20th century, when retailers like Sears and Montgomery Ward began selling appliances and furniture on the installment plan. Installment payments would later give the fledgling auto industry a major boost. At about the same time, some of the nation's more enlightened companies began experimenting with different kinds of savings and lending systems for their employees. The earliest savings and loan associations were formed among workers at a particular factory or shop. This is the model later used for credit unions in this country, with one difference.
The big difference between credit unions and banks and other financial institutions is that the credit union is a not-for-profit organization.
Credit unions have owner members rather than just ordinary customers. So credit unions treat their members better because they're the owners.
By the mid-20th century, after the Second World War, people expected to get into debt when they set up their households and began having children. And many people, then and now, never get out of debt. When it comes to some services, the poor pay a lot more than the rich. The Government Accounting Office reports that 17% of all American households, more than half of the minorities, have no bank accounts of any type. And when they need credit, they pay a high price for it.
Today, unfortunately, there are more pawn shops in the United States than there are credit unions. And they take advantage of people. They charge outrageous rates for small loans and so on.
Pawn shops are not the only problem. Check cashing services can charge as much as 1/3 of the check's value. And someone taking out a small emergency loan, say $360 for example, will pay $200 in interest charges, 80%, or more than half the value of the loan. It costs a lot to be poor in America. But it isn't just the poor. A surprising number of middle-class Americans find themselves in the same situation, turning to what are called fringe banks, the check cashers, the payday lenders, and others. Credit unions offer a better solution. Let's take a look.
Financially, I was in ruin. I was writing bad checks for alcohol and not caring about the consequences. When I came out the other side after completing treatment, the credit union allowed me the dignity of keeping my account open. I came and asked, and they listened to my story. Today, 7.5 long/short years later, I'm a father of 2 daughters, beautiful daughters, 23 months and 5.5 years. I'm having my 11th wedding anniversary in April. Homeowner, which I didn't think I would ever be.
I had gotten divorced. I had a bankruptcy in my past, and I was in a jam. The car I had was close to 6 years old. I had over 100,000 miles on it, and I was working up in Secaucus, and I needed a car that was more reliable to get me back and forth to work. I went to the credit union because they knew my sister-in-law who worked in the borough, and she got me into the credit union, and they were able to give me a secured used car loan. I'm very grateful to the credit union for having the faith in me and not working like a bank. My credit union was instrumental after my divorce and after the bankruptcy in helping me get started again, getting a firm financial footing, and helping me to rebuild my life.
I can get up to $200. We started a little business that didn't work out, and I owed the government tax money from the business, which I paid off eventually. So that left me a little strapped, but the credit union was always there for me, always there. If I needed something, they were there. And it wasn't as if you had to go to the bank and sign a million papers and beg and so forth. The credit union says, hey, you're working here, we'll take it out of your pay, and that was it. If I needed a car or a large expense, went to the credit union.
A multimillionaire named Edward Filene pioneered the credit union movement in the United States. His family had founded Filene's department store in Boston. And when Edward took over, he displayed a social conscience that was unusual at the turn of the century. His workers got shorter hours, higher wages, coffee breaks, and company benefits. He set up a program for low-cost credit and invented the bargain basement. But it was a round-the-world tour in 1907 that led to Filene's role in the founding of credit unions in the U.S.
He found in India the cooperative societies that were run by the British government, and that interested him.
In his letters home, Filene described the culture he observed in India.
The peasants are abstemious to a degree inconceivable to an American. They live almost entirely on rice and a few vegetables and very little milk. I have been unable to find that they indulge in a single pastime or amusement that costs anything. But no matter how poor he is, a man will not disgrace his family by omitting a celebration.
Villagers used to go deeply into debt to finance the celebrations Filene described. But under the British, villagers formed credit societies so they could borrow from each other. That way, they paid 12% interest instead of the 120% they once paid to moneylenders. Filene thought the same principle would work at home. He was not, however, the first North American with that idea.
It came to North America through Alphonse Desjardins, who was a legislative reporter in Ottawa. And he felt that the Canadian government was not as interested as he thought they should be in the plight of the poor. So he established what he called Caisse Populaire, which is the People's Cash Box, in Lévis, Quebec, where he lived. And he operated it out of his home with the assistance of his wife.
And when Filene returned home, he and his friend Pierre Jay, the Massachusetts banking commissioner, decided to invite Desjardins to talk to the legislature.
And out of that came the Massachusetts Credit Union Act of 1909, which was the first credit union act in the United States. It became the model act for other state credit union acts, and it was also the model act for the federal credit union law.
By the time the country entered the Roaring '20s, fewer than 200 credit unions had been formed, and Filene realized he needed more help in spreading the word. That's when he hired a lawyer named Roy Bergengren to serve as executive secretary of the Credit Union National Extension Bureau.
He was a very service-oriented person, a real crusader. In fact, the book he wrote about it, he called Crusade. And he was a very dynamic speaker, and his enthusiasm was very infectious. He traveled by train all over the country, speaking in factories, stores, farmers' organizations, anywhere he could think of that he thought a credit union could be formed.
In 1933, Filene, now 73 years old, also toured America speaking to employee groups and explaining the benefits of credit unions. A year later, in 1934, Roosevelt signed the Federal Credit Union Act, allowing people to organize credit unions in every state of the Union.
Credit unions, I think, are important to the history of the United States because credit unions were founded for almost the same reasons that the United States was founded. The United States was established because of the tyranny of the taxation of the British. Credit unions were founded because of the tyranny of loan sharks.
Today, credit unions are an important economic force all over the world. Latin America, Australia, Asia, Africa, both Western and Eastern Europe, and of course, the United States.
Tear down this wall.
When the Iron Curtain came down and the Soviet Union broke apart, one of the first things people did was form credit unions. Cooperatives are even being formed in China today. Credit unions today are one component of a national financial system that includes trade and professional associations in every state, correspondent service cooperatives, ATM networks, insurance companies, and a corporate credit union network. Corporate credit unions were formed to help individual credit unions invest and borrow money.
At one time, when a credit union had some excess money, they gave it to a bank or a savings and loan. And when they wanted to borrow money, they borrowed it from the bank or the savings and loan. And the credit unions at the time said, why don't we have something of our own? So when we borrow from each other, and when we make a profit, we share it with one another in the credit union spirit.
I think cooperation between credit unions is important. We're able to share information, knowledge, and also our experience, whether it's good or bad.
One of the things that separates credit unions from other financial institutions is that their structure as not-for-profit financial cooperatives enables them to be able to cooperate also one with another. They're not battling for profits out there that they fear that some other institution may receive those profits if they don't get them.
Cooperation is important because you're not having to spend money to do the kind of research that someone else has already done. Cooperation is important because we're so small when you look at the entire financial community that without the cooperation we're not going to survive.
Nearly 80 million Americans belong to America's 11,000 credit unions. To them, membership means sophisticated financial services, preferential pricing, and something that's priceless: dignity and respect. Today, credit unions continue to give people an alternative to the high-priced fringe banks that seem to keep an alarming number of folks imprisoned in an ever-deepening pool of debt. Credit unions are changing lives. They continue to make a difference, as they have for the past 150 years.
Credit unions will be faced with a dynamic and changing marketplace for years to come. It's imperative that the foundation upon which they build their ability to compete and to be changing with that marketplace is that it be based upon safety and soundness.
Today, most people can join a credit union. Tomorrow, everybody should be able to join a credit union. I believe that that should be an inalienable right to everyone to choose to be able to do that.
We continue to have the best product, the best service, and I think that's a message that we need to work on, every individual in the credit union movement, from CUNA to the corporates to the leagues, individual credit unions, volunteers, board members. Everyone needs to get that message out that we indeed are the leader, we are the benchmark for financial services institutions in the United States.
The challenge right now to our credit union and to many credit unions is trying to serve a variety of members a variety of ways. Some people still love coming into the credit union and standing in lines. Some people never want to come in the credit union and they just as soon do everything over the internet. Some people prefer the phone. We're trying to provide all of those services equally to all of our members.
It's essential that credit unions combine head and heart, that they be as effective as the competition that they face in good strategy, good operations, but that they combine this with what has set them apart from the very beginning, and that is that there be heart, that there be on this bedrock of altruism. And I think that is the future.
As you've seen and heard, credit unions make a profound difference in our society. They fill a need in the unique way that only a credit union can. They show us in true American style what it means for people to cooperatively help one another realize their dreams. Living the dream of Filene and the early pioneers, that's today's credit union spirit. Ordinary people dedicated to providing extraordinary credit.